right, so once again, we have a look at our unit circle. We're going to be using these values. Again, if you started with our first sections with the right triangles, memorizing the sine, cosine, and tangent for example, 30, 60, and 45 degree angles, you'll be way better off. Once again, to review, for these values on the unit circle, for example, the 30 degree angle, you go for its terminal side. Okay, the point there, the x value is the cosine, the y value is the sine. Okay, so we have cosine, comma, sine. Okay, also notice these values are repeated in each quadrant. Okay, when we're 30 degrees away from the x-axis, as we are here, 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 and here, notice our values are repeated. The only difference is that the sign changes depending on which quadrant you're in. So notice for all of them, we have root 3 over 2 and 1/2, root 3 over 2 and 1/2, but some of them have positive and some are negative depending on your quadrant. You can also use this chart, which rather than looking at it on the circle, just lays out all of the values, sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent for all of those key angles on the unit circle. So 30, 45, 60, 90, and then notice here's our angles, our references repeated. Okay, so you can also use this chart. I would have it printed off somewhere so that you're able to refer to it quite easily. What we're going to use that for is to find true and false. Okay, so true or false, the sine of 135 plus the sine of 45 is 180. So what I would do is just go find my values. Okay, the sine of 135, so here's sine 135 is 1 over the square root of 2. A lot of times we'll call that root 2 over 2 because we know we're supposed to simplify those. Okay, the sine of 45, if you have that memorized, is also 1 over root 2 or root 2 over 2 in simplified form. Does that equal the sine of 180? So what the sine of 180 is 0. Okay, is that true? Well, we're adding two things together that are both positive to get 0, and you can check with your calculator, but that is not true. Okay, next, tangent 60 minus tangent 30, does that equal the tangent of 30? So we're looking with tangents here. The tangent of 60 is the square root of 3. The tangent of 30 is 1 over the square root of 3. We're going to use those values. So tangent 60 was root 3 minus tangent 30, 1 over the square root of 3. Does that equal the tangent of 30, which again was 1 over root 3? Now this one looks tempting, like it possibly could be correct. I would try that out on your calculator, or you could do some simplifying here, either way. Okay, but what you end up getting is false. Those two amounts are not equal. Okay, so one option you would have is just put that in your calculator. Do the square root of 3 minus 1 over the square root of 3. And you get about 1.15. And then does that equal 1 divided by the square root of 3, which is about 0.57. And they're not equal. All right, the cosine of 270 plus the cosine of 30. Okay, so let's take a look. Cosine of 270, we're on our cosines here. 270 is 0. Okay, plus the cosine of 30 is the other one they wanted us to use. So cosine 30 is root 3 over 2. And they want to know if that's equal to the cosine of 300, which is 1/2. So you have those values written down. Take a look. Cosine 270 is 0 plus the cosine of 30, which is the square root of 3 over 2. Does that equal the cosine of 300, which was 1/2? And those are not equal. So this is also false. Okay, lastly, we're working with some squareds here. Does the sine of 120 equal sine 60 squared plus sine 60 squared? Okay, so we're working with sines here. Here's our sine. We want the sine of 120 is root 3 over 2. Okay, and again, if you're working on memorizing those, that's great. Okay, what's the sine of 60? Do you happen to have that one memorized? It's also the square root of 3 over 2. We're going to square that. Sine 60, square root of 3 over 2. We're going to square that. So is the square root of 3 over 2 equal to, this would just square, that would give me root 3 squared is 3, and on the bottom 2 squared is 4. Root 3 squared is 3, on the bottom 2 squared is 4. Is the square root of 3 over 2 equal to 6/4? And if you work that out, you will find that it is not. Okay, if you find each of those values, they are not equivalent. This actually turns out to be root 3 over 2, and 6/4 reduces to 3/2. Those are definitely not the same thing. Okay, so be careful, these are not equivalent. Taking the sine cosine of an angle changes because it's giving you the ratio of the sides and not 30. Okay, it's a ratio of a 30-degree angle.